Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Spotify plans to change podcasting forever. According to the Wall Street Journal, Spotify and Pandora are looking to expand beyond music streaming and into the world of podcasting as they aim to capture more of consumers' listening time and eventually boost the company's profit margins. So we're going to examine that today and kind of figure out why you would care about what the heck Spotify's doing and how they're going to change podcasting. But of course, we can't begin the conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Hey, I want to know because I'm still trying to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
It just helps me understand something.
Yeah, but
for the very simple fact of just new knowledge.
New knowledge. So that you could care just because you like to know things. But I mean, if somebody's listening to us right now,
yeah,
then they consume podcasts. So they'd probably care if the way that they consume podcasts is going to change.
But I'm a new consumer of podcasts. I mean, I'm kind of getting into it.
Are you a consumer? I mean, I know you're a producer of podcasts.
There are some that my daughters listen to that, you know, I've gotten on and listened to one or two just to see. You know, none of them are as good as us, even though they're on the national media, but they're not, you know, we're just waiting to be discovered.
That's right. Well,
but yeah, so I am a little bit, you know, but I do like to learn new things because they played some game yesterday after dinner and something about memes.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, I can't get those. And they go, no. I said, well, they said, it's not an emoji. So see, yesterday I learned the difference between a meme and an emoji.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, I'm not really up there, you know, with this stuff. I mean, I could talk.
Yeah.
But I'm the one who found the article.
Yeah, that's true.
And I did kind of enjoy it. So,
well,
it is something I want to know about.
Yeah, it's good from an educational standpoint. It's also good. I mean, like I said, if you're listening to this show, it's pertinent to you because the reality is, if we're being honest, right, everybody knows the State of Us is not a, you know, multi-million-dollar or multi-million subscriber kind of podcast. There's only a few. I mean, just in all fairness, there's only a very few podcasts that have cracked that million listenership mark, and even less that ever crack 1,000. I mean, on the way other spectrum, you know, most podcasts don't ever break 1,000 subscribers or downloads per episode.
Right.
So we're in this at the moment. We're in the lower end of the very weird, you know, difficult to find, and that's part of what this is focusing on. Is so far, if you're listening to this, it's probably because somebody else told you to check it out. You stumbled on it on social media, or maybe you were just browsing late one night through podcasts and ran across us. You know, whatever it is, the word of mouth thing, you know,
which is the only way to get it, right?
I mean, it's really the only good way to find it is you're relying on that. I hope that I've maybe stumbled on it. Now that you listen, right, you probably keep listening. But if you were searching for us for the first time, think back to how did I start listening? It might be hard to remember how you came across it, or maybe it was, well, so-and-so told me to, you know?
Right. Well, like mine, word of mouth, you know, my daughters say, Dad, we think you might like this. You know, they listened to it or they were told about something and they said, Dad, you might like this.
Yeah.
So it's my searching is word of mouth. I'm not doing it on my computer or whatever. It's just as word of mouth. But so there's got to be a better way, right?
Yes. So the Wall Street Journal reports that podcasting is a small but growing medium that attracts young, engaged listeners. I
knew that much.
Yeah.
So I'm at the bottom knowledge base, but
you knew that.
Know that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'd hope so. You're on a podcast, so it's good.
Well, I kind of started the show with not knowing the difference between a meme and an emoji. I just wanted to let people know that I'm not a total dunce when it comes to podcasts.
Gotcha.
All right.
But producers and distributors have yet to hit on a solid model for earning money. Now notice producers and distributors, okay? Spotify and Pandora say they are positioned to do so in part by tackling one of the medium's biggest challenges. It remains tricky for listeners to discover new podcasts. Pandora's chief executive officer, Roger Link, said, quote, "When you contrast it to music discovery, it's like it's in the Stone Age. We think we can expand our audience by bringing people in to listen to a certain podcast and keeping them on the platform with the music we have," he said. Over time, profit margins would grow because podcasts cost less than music. And you might not have realized that, but when you think about it, what Lance and I do, and even more produced podcasts than ours, and what I mean by that is more sound effects throughout or audio clips, we're a discussion-oriented podcast, so there's really not a lot of fancy production going on. But even ones that are more produced typically don't cost as much as music. And that's often associated with the royalties related to music and how musicians are paid and the work that goes into obviously creating a 2-minute or 3-minute piece of music. It takes a lot of time and work, which is why they don't release one every day. It's just not, it's not practical, you know? So the money out there on in these businesses is for streaming the music. Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm trying to break it down for us.
Right. That's the cost.
Okay.
3/4.
My cost is for the music that I have to buy the license for.
Yeah.
So it's really cheap for me to put podcast on my site if I'm Spotify or Pandora, right?
So think about this. Spotify says it carries 150,000 podcasts. Pandora says it has hundreds. Analysts estimate, though, that podcasts represent less than 1% of listening time on either service.
Wow. Okay.
Less than 1. I mean,
so the
we
music's
don't even
where
get
the
a
money,
whole percentage point.
The music's where the money is.
Well, the music is right now why people come. You don't, in other words, you don't download Spotify to listen to a podcast. You download Spotify to listen to music. And oh, by the way, there's podcasts there. So it's a nice way to listen. I mean, and in honesty, I did not subscribe to Spotify because I wanted podcasts. I subscribed because I wanted music. And then as True Chat's evolved and we've become listed on Spotify, it's, that's a convenient way to listen because I already use it. So it's just nice that it's all in one place. I think what they're looking at now is we have, 150,000 podcasts, and basically we don't make hardly any money off of most of them, if any at all. We have to figure out how to change that. And the other problem is, my guess would be, of those 150,000, probably 145,000 of them have seen almost little to no growth because they've been listed on Spotify. And yet Spotify has 80 million something US subscribers. So,
but it's not because of.
The problem is what you see right now is somebody like NPR, who, by the way, is the largest podcast publisher by listenership. Okay. With 18.9 million monthly audience.
Right. But like I found out what they do is I listen to NPR on the radio, but what they've done is I've listened to NPR a little bit more and more is they advertise their podcast on their radio show or their radio channel.
Yep.
So as you were explaining to me, getting ready to do this show, is that the leaders in podcasts are people who have the old style media in place for advertising because there's really no distinct advertisement for podcasts. Did I learn quickly here today?
Yeah. Think of it this way, right? If people say online video, YouTube, right? That's, even you used YouTube once or twice in class, as I recall. Right?
I did,
you pulled up that YouTube video, and if you weren't cursing at the projector,
if it worked,
the
internet,
if everything went well, we might get to see a clip of a YouTube video. That's what most people think. If you say online video, YouTube is probably the first thing that comes to mind. You say podcasts, and Apple Podcasts probably comes to mind. But as far as if I ask somebody, how would you find a new podcast? You'd get 10 different answers from 10 different people, because there's just not a unified platform of discovery.
There's not a central location or one way to do it to find what you want.
So we said Spotify's got 150,000 podcasts.
Right.
By comparison, Apple, 600,000 podcasts on its platform. And yet it generates no revenue from its podcasts. Not any. Isn't that amazing?
So why are people missing out on this? I mean, why is that?
Because
has it grown too fast? Is it too new?
I think it's still too early. And for a long time, most people didn't know what you meant when you said podcast.
Because we're reading, you and I are reading on our own the history of capitalism in America. I can't believe that you got 600,000 of something, 150, and nobody's learned how to figure out a way to make money off of it yet?
Well, they are. But again, it's the people who were already in the old media business. Listen to this list here. Of the top 10, half of them are old media companies. You got NPR, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's as national public radio as we get, right? iHeartRadio, which, by the way, is the largest owner of AM and FM stations in the country. The actual organization that owns iHeartRadio, I don't remember what their name is, the official corporation, but they're the owner of most radio throughout the U.S. Then you have the New York Times, WNYC Studios, and ESPN. I mean, those are all household old media names of some kind,
right?
Whether you're a newspaper,
and they're all
radio,
part of the top
whatever.
10 in podcasts.
All part of the top 10 in terms of monthly audience. So really, and this is what I talked about years ago when we started True Chat. Some people had asked me, do you think that podcast will kill radio? And I said, no. Podcasts are radio. They're just the next way. First it was AM, then it was FM. Like
MTV killed the radio star.
Then it's satellite,
Yeah.
And now it's just we're listening through the internet. And that's what makes, I know there's going to be people out there who are going to say, well, Justin, though, podcasts are so much more diverse and, intellectual than radio. Yeah, well, you can listen to that on NPR. NPR has been around for however long, and they've been doing that. We're going to talk in very seductive
I know
terms.
It's cool, isn't it, though?
It's very...
I really like it.
It's part of their brand, right?
Oh.
I mean, my guess is if I played 5 audio clips for you and only one of them was NPR, you could probably pick it out just by the manner in which they're talking at you.
I know, but you have to pay attention because they make it sound like what they're talking about is important.
Yeah, even when it's not.
Oh, I don't know about that, but okay.
Well, see, they got you.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. No,
they sound intelligent, so it must be good stuff. We should try that. Maybe if we start talking like them, people. So, but my point there is, people may say, yeah, podcasts. There is a more diverse range of content. There's freaking over 600,000 different programs in podcasting. That's a lot of different programs.
Sure is.
I mean, when you think about that. And when you think about
how are we getting people to listen to us with that many options? And it's so hard to find stuff.
It's amazing that we have the listeners we do, right? I mean,
we must be good then.
Because
what you're telling me is it's really, there's a ton of people, a boatload of people out there doing what we do, and there's no systematic way to find anybody.
Yep.
You kind of just stumble onto
you just hope
the people that you like to listen to when you go searching on podcasts, right? I mean, is that
yes.
But there's also like a growing number of people who have listened to podcasts, right? I mean, within the article, wasn't there? To me, it was a staggering number of people who within a month or a year have listened to a podcast. So it's a growing genre, right?
So
but there's no way to find us.
Yeah. So we're going to look at 3 things next: audio consumption, audience, and estimated podcast ad revenue. Okay. Because these are 3 really important things to understanding the problem that the industry faces right now. So audio consumption. According to a recent survey, Americans spend an average of 3 hours and 49 minutes each day consuming audio. You got that, Lance?
Almost 4 hours.
Almost 4 hours a day consuming audio content. Okay?
This is because people can't see us. I'm taking notes because this is the way I learn.
Yes.
And this is where I'm learning. So go ahead.
So of that almost 4 hours, half of that is spent with AM or FM radio. Okay. 8% is spent with satellite radio.
That's me. Okay.
So really, we just lump that in with, terrestrial radio. That's the term that we use to describe AM, FM, and satellite. Okay. These are broadcasting through the airwaves audio to you.
But see, I pay money to listen to XM radio.
Yes, you
but
do.
Since I have XM, it's not because I pay for it, but because I have it, I like my choices so much better. I almost totally disregarded AM and FM.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up on AM.
Me too.
And then,
I grew up on FM.
As I got older, obviously the music that I was listening to was played on FM for the most part.
Yep.
But now, since I got introduced when I bought a car one time that had XM radio.
You had that free.
I'm a consumer. That's where, it worked.
Uh-huh.
And more for the sports.
Yeah.
But I noticed that even when it's dead, I love my choices in music because whatever mood I'm in, I can get.
You can find some.
But I'm willing to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Whatever that little bit that it costs is worth the convenience of. I mean, in the promise, every baseball game.
Yes.
Every professional baseball game you can hear.
I've even been listening to.
if you want to, you can hear every baseball game.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The freak that I am, I've been getting out and driving around so I could listen to the fall league games being played in Arizona right now between people that have never been to the major leagues.
Uh-huh.
Just because I like to hear the routine of the announcing for baseball, here. And I know people are like, well, you get in your car to do that. You could just buy XM radio for your house. Yeah. Well, I haven't done that. I still think I'm still,
I know.
I try to be modern.
I've thought about that too.
I still try to be modern, but not. But anyway, so almost everybody's consuming
the majority of people
their audio information through some form of radio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through a terrestrial radio source. Yeah. So 50% AM, FM, 8% Sirius XM, 14% is owned music. So what we mean there is you go on to iTunes and actually buy the song. You pay $1.29 or whatever, and the song's yours. Or this also would refer to vinyl, CDs. Anything that's a physical form of media that you paid a set price for, and then now you own
and listen to it at home.
That's
audio consumption.
Yes. Okay. That would be owned music. So 14% is owned music. 16% is streaming music. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it surpasses owned music now by 2% on a daily basis. This is how people spend it.
I just did it yesterday because I was in the kitchen.
Yeah.
My wife, when I marathon sessions in the kitchen, she streams me music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how, but she streams it.
5% is TV music channel.
MTV killed the radio star. You don't know that cultural reference, do you?
I do know that reference.
Okay, just ignore it.
Because there was a song about it.
Yes. Right. And see, I remember when MTV first came on the air.
Oh.
You don't, but anyway.
No. Well, that's because I'm not old.
Yeah, I am. But I remember when MTV was a news station.
But yes.
Yeah.
And then
of the people walking the earth, I'm in the older half.
Yeah. The sad thing here. So we just said 5% TV music channel.
Okay.
Guess what pulls in right behind the TV music channel? Podcast, baby, at 4%. Oh, bringing it in strong.
So it's still relatively small for people who listen.
In comparison to all audio consumption every day. But the interesting thing is the people who do listen to podcasts, who are in it, they listen consistently and to a lot of podcasts. So that's back to where the appeal here is. Once somebody's a fan of podcasts, they're young and engaged. and advertisers. It's just, I mean, it's the greatest thing for them ever. It's, yeah, exactly. They're just drooling. It's like, oh, young people who do things. Oh, that's the best. You know, I mean, they love it.
But that's the majority population of podcasters, of listeners of podcasts.
That's the majority of the demographic.
All right.
So that's your breakdown of audio consumption. Almost 4 hours a day of audio, the average American. Think about that. That's a lot of time every day. You got 24 hours and we're spending 4 of those hours on listening to stuff.
Yep.
To audio. That's not TV time. That's, you know, with the exception of the TV music channel. I don't know most people though that sit there and, you know, watch the music channel.
We used to. Now don't get on us. We used to all run home from school and turn on MTV.
Okay, I'm not talking about MTV.
Michael Jackson and Thriller and all that kind of stuff.
I'm talking. This is talking about like the channel that just has the album.
Oh, and we listen to it like the 900 stations.
Yes,
I listen to country and western or 70s pop.
That's what we're talking about.
That's only when you have a party. You turn that on instead of your stereo. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. The audience.
You're learning me all kinds of stuff today.
The share of people in the U.S. who listen to a podcast at least once a month. Monthly podcast listenership in the United States has more than doubled over the past 5 years to 73 million people, according to Edison Research. That, just so you know, is 26% of the U.S. population. Now, that's a little skewed because that includes the whole darn population, right? So we're bringing in people who are babies into that too. If we adjust it for the adult population of people who, or really old people who, not that they can't listen because they're old, but because they're in a state where they don't take care of themselves much anymore, so they don't consume much media that isn't placed in front of them. If we adjust for that, you move up to like 40 or 50% of the adult, the realistic listening population. You know, because we got to throw everybody out basically who's under 12 years old, because and really,
and then a large number of them though are young people, who are very engaged.
Most listeners of podcasts are that coveted 18 to like 30 age group. Most of them, but so 26% of the American public is listening to a podcast at least once a month. Now, here's where it gets concerning though. Estimated podcast ad revenue, 2017, about 300 million. Projected for 2020, about 600 million. By contrast, though, I mean, that may sound nice, but understand that terrestrial radio, okay, good old brick and mortar per se, got the antenna sticking up out of the air.
Not ET, not extraterrestrial radio.
No.
Just terrestrial.
Just terrestrial.
Okay, we're not doing the extras.
14 billion.
Whoa.
So,
that's huge.
Not
huge
even
difference,
Yeah, not even really scratching the surface. So the point here is, well, why is this? It seems like, I mean, just from a outside perspective, podcasts seem like a great idea, right? Listen on your terms when you want, and a huge lineup of content to choose from. I mean, you and I think that SiriusXM has a great lineup of content, and we've got 100, 200 channels. Really probably 130 that actually have content at any given moment. And then a whole bunch of other channels that are as there's content available. You got 600,000 channels of podcasts. I mean, that's, again, not even in the same ballpark. So why would that not be appealing? On your terms, generally it costs nothing to listen to most podcasts. It's free. And there's a huge selection. Well, that'd be great, except for individuals like Lance and for your average person, and I'd count myself in this, who don't want to spend hours trying to find something that they want to listen to. They just want to tune in and go, you know. They want to try 3 or 4 things rapid fire, find one they like, and listen a little bit. That's what they want. They can't do that because it just isn't available. And the couple platforms out there that are starting up, Lance, that now offer something like that, don't have enough podcasts to make them viable.
Okay.
You know, there's not enough people who put their podcast on that platform that people would choose to go to that. because the variety is not there, you know, or their favorite podcast that they already listen to isn't there. So it's like, I don't want to mess with that. I listen on Spotify, and I heard about this podcast, and I could go listen to it on Radio Public, but my favorite podcast isn't over there. So I don't want to mess with that. And that's what Spotify is doing here. And that's the change that's coming, is they're going to put their artificial intelligence to work and do a better job of categorizing and tagging and describing the podcasts that exist on the platform to make more intuitive referrals to people, so that the referrals are more meaningful because they're more accurate.
Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So why now? Well, I mean, what's making them decide to do it? Is it the lack of earnings or the need for more money? I mean, why decide now to do this? Why didn't they do it from the beginning?
So 3/4 of Spotify's, approximately, of their revenue, money in the door, goes directly to paying for royalties of music. So that's not administration. It's not advertising. It's not customer service. 75% of all the money they bring in from what you pay them, so we'll just call it $10, right? $7.50 from me go not to Spotify, to the music companies and to the people who create the music. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's how it is. So then Spotify now has their remaining $2.50 to service me, to maintain the app, to acquire new customers, and to hopefully report some kind of profit back. And that's just not a great margin. At the moment, it's basically non-existent. I mean, Spotify, Pandora, they're mostly losers when it comes to, are you making money?
Right.
Because it costs as much to administer everything as what they bring in after they've paid royalties. So they're looking at podcasts.
Okay, that makes sense then.
This is, right, all the benefits I cited of why listen to a podcast. The convenience, the variety. There's something for everybody. And I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Not every podcast is for everyone, but there is a podcast for everyone.
So even the people that aren't listening, if they knew about it, they would listen because it's something that they're interested in.
Uh-huh. We'll take ours. I mean, right? We know we've got people who are mid-20s, and we know we've got people who are 60s. But there's a whole bunch of people in between there who don't want to listen to this, or who do. So I think there's a wide spectrum of content out there. Some is more broad appeal than others. I think ours is one of those that probably has a little bit wider appeal because there's a more variety of topics. We're not super niche when it comes to what we talk about. But there's podcasts out there, like maybe you're just a crazy Elvis fan. You just die hard. There's I guarantee you there's probably at least 100, maybe 1,000 podcasts devoted to Elvis. And they either all they do every podcast is play Elvis music and talk about Elvis music.
Right.
Or they, geek out about facts about Elvis's life. I mean, if that's you, if you're that kind of fan, you can find that. Now, it's a pain in the rear to find, though, but you could do that. So that's kind of the point. If you're really into you in baseball, you could probably find 5 baseball programs, podcasts that you just, they're way better than anything you've ever heard.
That's part of what I listen to, but you're right. There's probably even more out there that I can't even find. So the only ones I listen to are the ones that people have told me about.
Right.
Because I don't go searching for other ones.
The challenge is, and this is where I want to, because to this point, it's like everybody's like, great, sounds great. There's this big problem. Spotify is going to fix it. Okay, what's next? Well, it's not all good because just like with any content distributor, it puts the content creators at the mercy of the distributor. And that's been a big holdup, I think, in the development of this industry. AM and FM, not really the same way. Because you apply for a license from the government who regulates the industry, And then you're guaranteed your right to do what you want with that frequency, as long as you abide by the rules that everybody else plays by. Podcasts aren't that way, though. We aren't a regulated industry. And that's why recently, just saw a newsletter about this the other day from Stitcher, is another company that we mentioned where you can listen. They're kind of like the Android equivalent. If you have an Android phone, you don't have an iPhone, you have an Android. They're kind of the equivalent of Apple Podcasts, sort of.
Yeah.
They sent out a thing saying that at this podcast convention coming up, there's a big push by some in the industry to encourage the industry to become regulated, which is somewhat counterintuitive.
Yes, that's huge.
Yeah, because why would you want that?
Right.
Well, when you become beholden to somebody like Apple or Spotify, who are these private companies who are your distributor, where again, remember in that AM/FM space, the public owns the airwaves as established by multiple laws in our history. The airwaves belong to the public, and thereby the government, as the representatives of the public, will license those airwaves to people to distribute themselves. You know, the AM station owns its antenna, so nobody's in charge of its distribution except it. But with a podcast, unless you got your own app, and even then, your app is distributed through where? An app store, which is owned by Apple or Google. You can't get out of it, Lance. You know, one way or another, these guys got you by the throat.
Right.
And if they say jump, you say how high.
You either have to do it or you're gone.
I mean, everything you have.
Yeah.
All listeners, I mean, it's gone. With the exception of a website. And most people don't want to listen that way.
So if they decide to change everything and you don't follow their rules, you're done.
Yeah, too bad.
And you're off the air.
Too bad. Yep. Sorry. Bye.
But if it were regulated, then we could all apply for a license from the FCC, or I would assume that's where we go.
Right. So that's kind of the thinking, is this conversation that's starting with maybe we should, maybe
what's
podcasters.
What's the downside? The freedom?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, part of the big appeal to podcasts is the variety of content. And if you put in place more cost prohibitive restrictions, you know, I always tell people who are looking to purchase TrueChat services, because that's what we do. For those of you that don't know, people pay us to help them create podcasts. That's what we do at a basic level. I don't know where I was going with that. It was important, but people pay us. What was I saying before that?
You were talking about, I was asking, what's the downside?
Oh, yeah.
Is this why not? I mean, you know, why
the freedom and the variety of content. I mean, because if there's more cost prohibitive things than there already are, it becomes less likely to get independent creators who aren't part of a publishing house, aren't part of one of these old media names, to do podcasts well. I always that's what I was getting at. I always tell our clients, the reason you pay us is not because you couldn't do a podcast on your own. It's because in terms of quality, you want to be in the top 20%, not the bottom 80. Most people are in the 80. We're in the 20. You know, I mean, that's the thinking.
If you're going to do something, you want to do it well, hook up with us.
Yes. So we'll leave you with that to think about. Let us know your thoughts at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, etc. We want to know, should the podcast industry be regulated? Maybe that's a topic of future discussion, because I think that's a different one. But good education for Lance today. And you can listen Spotify, right?
Right. Stitcher.
Yep.
Apple Podcasts, and anywhere where fine podcasts are played.
For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.